In this episode, we're going to convert our drag and drop from a basic single drop zone drag and drop to a sortable list drag and drop that automatically resets our priority. Whether you followed the series from the beginning or you're jumping in with this episode, let's get started. Okay, so to implement the actual sorting that we want, like I showed you just a moment ago, we're going to need to convert primarily two components here: the qualifying rules with the list and the draggable rule, which is our child component that gets written out for every single rule. The major change that we're going to make is, instead of now what we were doing before, which was taking a rule and dropping it into a specific zone, that zone is going to go away. This is going to go away. We're not going to need this component anymore. What we're going to do is, we want the functionality that we want, like I showed you again a moment ago, was you want to be able to grab a rule and drop it again into the list and then have it resort itself and prioritize it based on where you dropped it. So we're going to change two components, and this component is the primary list, but we're going to start by changing the draggable rule first, because what we have to do is we have to change this hook to a use sortable. And the use sortable takes in different parameters than what the use draggable did. We don't need these, but what we do need is an index, and we don't have anything for that yet, but this is going to have to be passed in to the draggable rule here. So this is going to now be an input that we're going to require, and of course up here in the interface we have to update this. Additionally, we're going to add a property to this to destructure from this use sortable. So by default, the way your use sortable works is this: you can basically select anywhere on that particular element, and you can drag it. But we don't necessarily want that across our entire object. We may be doing other things inside there, and that can cross over and get a little confusing and create a nasty little UI. So what we want to do is we want to add a property called handle ref that we're going to destructure here. And what we do is we set this in the JSX markup on the object that we're actually dragging. And what that does is it says you can only drag and drop from this spot. In other words, you have to click on this spot in order to drag and drop. So it's kind of useful to do that, because you don't want to have necessarily, in most cases, your entire object being dragged and dropped, especially when there's complication like we're going to put into ours, where you're adding inputs and doing other things inside there. So lastly, and this is a pretty simple, and we don't have to make a lot of changes to this draggable rule class. I have written up markup for this that I'm going to copy paste in here. And so you can see that there's some markup changes and stuff, but the most important aspect of this to notice is this new button that's here. And this new button is what I was describing before. It has a little HTML symbol in here that creates like a 6-dot braille. And that's what we are going to click on and to move these rules around. Now, you'll notice also here I'm making the handle ref the reference to this. That's what I was describing above, which is this basically tells it, hey, this is the only place where we can drag and drop. And then other than that, I'm showing the zero-based index plus 1, so we can see what the actual priority is and that sort of thing. So that's all that needs to be done in this class. Again, just some rearranging of the properties and stuff. And now we're going to move into the qualifying rules and make changes there, which should be a little bit more substantial. Okay, so this page is going to be complaining about one thing, and that, of course, is the fact that we have an input that's required by draggable rule now that we're not supplying. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to supply the index from this loop that we're doing here via map right there. Okay, and so now it likes it, and we're going to save this off. Now what I'm going to do is I'm running this now. Here, I'll stop and restart just to make sure, and we'll do this. Make sure we have like the latest copy here. Okay, so you can see here now we have our 6 dot braille which acts as the handle ref. And so you can see we can drag and drop this now, and it will take this in just like like in the earlier episode with the excuse me, the zone. We can drop it in this list and have these resort automatically. But you'll notice one problem. You can see that the priority here is not changing, which is not what we want. We want this to remain. This should be 1, 2, 3, 4. So what we're going to do is we're going to kill this right there, and we're going to go back to the top. We're going to do a couple of things. One is just a little bit of housekeeping. These are selected rules, or they were selected rules before. We're going to change this to ordered rules because that makes more sense, right? We're ordering them in the same area, the same context versus what we were doing before, which is selecting them and dropping them into some list. Okay, so we're going to continue forward and do some cleanup down here. We no longer need available rules because we're not moving from one list to another. There's no available rules. They're all going to be in one list, just being resorted. So we're going to remove that. And then obviously in here, there's going to be some changes in this handle drag end. There's going to be some things we need to change in here now. Event canceled is fine. We don't need a target anymore because we're not actually targeting a particular zone. So we're going to remove that. And we're going to also remove this check, although we're going to replace it with a different check. So what we want to do is we want to say if is sortable, and I'll tell you what that checks in a sec. Source, and I'll say actually is not sortable. Then we want to return. All this does is it checks to see that the source object that you're dragging and dropping in has an index because it's required by the sortable hook, right? So that's what we're checking here. Did I say that right? Well, I said the sortable hook. It's required by the sortable functionality, whatever this library is here, the sortable library. So, and then we're going to remove this dropped rule. We don't need this anymore. And this is also going to go away. Now we also want to take the source that we have here, and we want to destructure a couple of things out of it. And one of them is the initial index, and then the other is the current index for obvious reasons. We have a from to index that we're going to be transitioning from, right? And so why is that complaining? Oh, because they're not used yet. Okay, that always gets me. Now, lastly, let's see, we want to, one other check we probably want to make is we want to make sure that the initial index is not equal to the current index, right? So when you've ever been in situations where you're dragging and dropping something, right, you don't want to put it into the same index again and have it do anything. It just isn't going to accept it. So that's the final check, right? Now we're going to do this here. We're going to set the ordered rules now, so it'll be a little different, right? Goal of this state setter here is to provide back the list of rules, but with the proper priority number there. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a function out of this, and we're going to pass in the current value that is the current object that's in here, right? So that would be the array of rules. And we're going to create a new array because we don't want to mutate the existing array in there. So rule on, you don't really want to mutate state objects in your component directly like that. And we can talk about that more in depth in a bit. But so what we've done is we've spread and created a new array called reordered. Now what we want to do is we want to say, we want to get the moved items, which will only be one, but we want to get the moved items from the reordered. So that's going to be reordered.splice, and we're going to want to move them from the initial index, and we only want to take a total of 1 in that line. So what that's going to do is that's going to say, go get the one item that we've moved and put it in here, right? And then what we want to do is we want to take our reordered array, and we now want to apply that moved rule to its new place in the index. So we're going to splice again, and we're going to say we're going to use that new index, and we're going to pass in the moved item that we just pulled from this prior line of code. And that should move them properly. But what we need to do now that they're in the proper order that we've applied them to, is that we need to create another reprioritized, I think I've spelled that right, array. And what this is going to do is going to take reordered, and we're going to walk through that, and we're going to pass the rule and the index in. Whoops. And we're going to create an arrow function here. Whoops. So inside here, we're going to have an object, and that object is going to say, return all of the properties of the rule, but we have a property of default priority in there. Make a small change to that and set that to I plus 1. Oops. And then return this array. So what that's going to do is that's going to set the state to this new reprioritized array and cause a re-render. So now that we've got all this done, we need to, I'm going to remove this. I'm just going to delete this. We need to clean up our JSX a little bit. Obviously, we're going to be using this now instead of available rules, right? And that should be a lowercase, right? And then, like I said, we're not using the zone anymore, so this can be completely deleted. And what else? Oh, I have some markup that I'm going to use here that I had created to make this a little bit cleaner. And that's this kind of a header thing. And we're going to finish off the div here. And then I had kind of a outside of this, a little bit of styling, not much. There's still going to be cleanup that needs to be done after this as well. So I think at this point, this should work. So we have our rules here. Oh, I never loaded them on mount. So what I need to do is I need to create a use effect here. And this use effect is going to also be an arrow function. And what I need to do is we need to set these guys from the get-go with what comes back here first. So I'm going to set the ordered rules, and I'm going to say set the rules that are loaded. And if they're not there, just set an empty array. And that should, hoping that will fix this problem. Oh, I forgot to set the dependency array on here. So there we go. Now let's test it. Refresh this, and so cool. So now you can see they reprioritize themselves. So this is a great stop point. You know what it's not though, because I can't stand the way this looks right now. I'm gonna pause this and restyle this, because what I do in my videos actually is in the intro, I complete this and then I film it after it's completed so I can show you what the endpoint is. And so I need this to look good, and this looks terrible. So I'm going to restyle this, and obviously you'll be able to get the style from the completed commit version that's down below in the description. But I will come back and paste the stuff in for you for whatever reason if you want to look at it. But yeah, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pause this, and then when I come back, this will look a lot better. Okay, So I've gotten the styles and stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and paste these in here. So changing the app.css, I'm just copying it and pasting what I'd done in here. And again, this will be available via the description below in the commit. That is the complete commit for this. Then we had to make a few changes to the two components that we worked with. So here we need to change the markup here. Save that. And then also the markup for draggable. Save that. And now let's look at this. Now see, that's a lot better. We've got, you can't drag this, and you can grab this and you can drag these, and this, you can see the numbers change. This looks cleaner, and this is something I can put in the intro. So you sort of back in time will have seen this going forward. Nice. All right. um, Thanks for watching, and we'll continue forward. In the next one, we'll complete sort of this, the basics of this resort, where we'll add the toggle to turn rules off and the input fields that are required for some of these rules. Thanks again.